What is up, guys? A couple of weeks ago, my friend Sarah sent me a message on YouTube and she said, can you please do a beginner's guide to pedals? How to make that sound. There are a few videos out there, but they don't explain what you have to do to make the magic happen. When to use which pedal, etc. Love the video. Thanks a lot, Sarah. Now that is a huge topic. So I'm probably going to split this over a few different videos, but I'm going to start right at the very beginning with pedal basics. So when we're talking about pedals, there are two main categories that pedals kind of fall into. There are individual pedals, like these, that usually do one, maybe two sounds. And there are multi-effects, like these, that do a whole load of sounds. The principles for the two are kind of the same though. And with that said, pedal 101. This is your amp. No, wait. This is your amp. No, this is your amp. Guitar goes in, signal's processed by the amp, goes to the speaker and comes out as sound. A lot of amps also have an effects loop where the sound goes out of the amp and returns back to the amp. Then you have pedals, loads of different kinds of pedals. Some work best in front of the amp, some work best through an effects loop. It depends what kind of sound you're going for and how the amp is set up. If you're running a clean amp, you can run the majority of pedals straight through the front, no problem. But if you are running a bit of dirt, there is a certain order of pedals that makes a bit more sense. And it can split this group of pedals into two smaller group of pedals, time-based effects and non-time-based. So your time-based effects are any kind of effect that varies over time or as a time parameter or a time knob on the actual device. Those are things like modulation, delay, and reverb. Now your non-time based effects are anything that just alters the sound. There's no time variant to it. Those are things like wah, compression, overdrive, and distortion. And as a general rule, you want to put non-time based effects into the front of the amp and you want to put time-based effects through an effects loop. There are obviously exceptions to this rule, and it's all a kind of matter of taste. Some time-based effects work great through the front of an amp, and if your amp isn't driving too hard, you can put the majority of effects, including time-based stuff, straight through the front of the amp, no problem. But if you're using a bit of gain, this is when the problems start. Let me show you what happens if we put a delay pedal through the front of a dirty amp. Okay, so we're in Logic. I've got Helix Native loaded up. I'm using the Friedman amp model on here with quite a bit of gain. So let's add the delay pedal after the amp. So that's working really nicely there, just adding a little bit of bloom to the notes with the delay pedal in the effects loop of the amp. And let's put it before the amp and see what difference it makes. So hopefully there you can hear how loud the repeats have become. I've done nothing to the delay pedal. It's exactly the same pedal put in both places with the same amount of repeats, the same mix, everything's exactly the same, but you can hear how different the sound is. You can hear how loud those repeats are and how each note is hitting the front of the amp so hard. Switch back to the other delay. Now, it's not to say that you might want the kind of sound that putting a delay pedal in front of the amp actually creates. Things like the intro to Welcome to the Jungle by Guns N' Roses actually use a delay pedal in front of the dirty amp to create that distorted repeat kind of sound. It all kind of depends on what kind of sound it is you're actually going for and what pedal you're using. So we've seen that the tone is drastically changed by whether you put a pedal through the front of the amp or through the effects loop. But what also makes a huge difference with pedals is their relationship to each other and pedal order. Okay, let's say that you wanted to put a load of pedals into the front of a clean amp. So here's our signal chain, and the amp at the end. Now for me, the end of the signal chain, regardless of whether we're using an effects loop or not, is always the same. Always ends with the reverb and delay pedals. At the very start of the signal chain, we have things like wah and compression. Now the order of those two is kind of interchangeable depending on the kind of sound that you want and the amount of dynamics that you want coming from the wah pedal. It's the kind of thing that you need to experiment with to find which way round you prefer. After the wah and compression, we have all of the dirt pedals. That's overdrive, distortion. Some fuzz boxes work well here, others want to be right at the front of the chain, but that's a discussion for another video. Then in the middle, we have all the modulation pedals. This is a kind of universally accepted order of pedals that guitarists tend to use. It means that no pedal is hitting the next pedal too hard and creating undesired tones. So this is the kind of setup that most guitar players will use. Now, say that we wanted to add some drive to that amp. Well, the modulation, delay and reverb probably aren't going to work too well now in front of that amp, so we'd use the effects loop. So we'd take these pedals out, the amp moves to the middle. The rest of these pedals can stay in the front of the amp. Wah, compression, overdrive, distortion, all hitting the front of a dirty amp will be absolutely fine. End of our signal chain through the effects loop stays the same as it was in front. Reverb at the end of the chain, delay before the reverb. The drive coming from the amp will hit those pedals nicely and we'll get the same kind of tone that we saw before. Then it becomes a little bit more difficult. The modulation pedals can sit in the effects loop, or some of them work well in front of the amp. I've run things like phase 90s into the front of a dirty amp because it creates a bigger, fuller sound, like the Van Halen kind of tone. Other pedals work better in the loop. Some flanges, chorus pedals, things like that. It all kind of depends on the kind of tone that you're trying to create. The best way to do it is to experiment by placing pedals in different placements, but sticking to the kind of agreed order that pedals should be in and seeing what you like best. There's a great video that the legend Steve Vai did about pedal placement, and I'll put a link in the cards right here. One pro tip that I will say is after you've got through all your drive pedals, instead of putting your tuner right at the front of your signal path, put it after the drive pedals. That way when you hit it, it'll mute all the noise coming from the drive pedals and give you silent tuning. So I've covered a huge amount of material here, tried to take it right back to basics and just understand the fundamentals of pedals, how they work with an amp and where you should kind of put them to get them sounding their best. But again, it's all experimentation. Just try it and see what you think sounds best. In future videos, I'm going to look at individual pedals in detail, how I use them, where I put them, how I dial them in to get certain tones, things like that. But for now, I hope this has been of some use, getting the fundamentals understood. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you want to watch another video on my channel, click it right here. And remember to subscribe right there. See you in the next one.